Hey everybody, welcome to our third installment in our class on the Holy Apostles. This week we're going to be talking about Saint Simon Peter, who is one of my favorite people in the Gospels. He's one of my favorite people in the Bible, and I'm really excited to share more about Peter with you and to tell you why I love Peter so much. So Peter is a fisherman. That's what he does. And he and his brother Andrew, who we learned about last week, are fishing in 3 of the 4 Gospels when Jesus approaches them about joining his ministry. And in a couple of the Gospels, they're not having much luck. And so Jesus suggests to them, why don't you put your nets on the other side of the boat? And they do, and in one of these miracles, they bring up so many fish that they can hardly bring them into the boat without the net breaking. And Peter immediately recognizes that Jesus is somebody special, somebody worth devoting his life to. And that's exactly what Peter goes on to do. In all of the Gospels, Peter and Jesus have a really strong connection. They have a very close friendship. And Peter is with Jesus in most of the pivotal moments in Jesus' ministry. Peter is with Jesus when he walks on water. Peter is with Jesus the moment of the transfiguration on the mountain in 3 of the 4 Gospels. He's one of the first people in the Gospel of Matthew to name Jesus as the Messiah, as the Lord, as the Son of God come to save the world. And he's also one of the last people to stay with Jesus on the night that he's arrested and taken in for questioning. He is one of the last named disciples to be with Jesus in the courtyard of the high priest. And so you see that Peter and Jesus have a very close friendship. Peter is there. He's involved in many of these pivotal moments of ministry. But Peter also has a tendency to have a sort of shadow side. In all of these stories that I just mentioned, there's an element of Peter doing something just a little bit wrong, of not quite getting it right, that we'll talk more about on Sunday. And you'll see where he has these parallels of beautiful, beautiful insight, but then just a slight tendency to mess it up just a little bit, to blunder through it. And to me, it's a sense of hope. He's a person, like any other person, who messes up a lot, and he still goes on to become one of the founders of the early church after Jesus' ascension. He's one of the most important figures in those early few days of the church. And so he gives us some hope that even when we mess up, God can still do great and wonderful things with us and through us. So Peter is an example of a very faithful, loving human being, but he's also flawed. And that's an example for us who are working to get better in our own faith. So here's some trivia for you on Peter. In the Gospel of Matthew, right after after Peter declares Jesus to be the Messiah, the Son of God, Jesus tells him, Peter, you are the person on which I'm going to found the church. You are the person I'm going to give the keys to the kingdom to. And so in Catholic tradition, Peter is the first bishop of Rome, the first pope. So the papal seal, if you've ever seen it, is 2 crossed keys over a bishop's mitre hat. And that's because of Peter. He's supposed to be the first pope. And so he lent the 2 keys to the symbol of the papal seal. And in popular lore, St. Peter, having the keys to the kingdom of heaven, is also thought to be the gatekeeper of the pearly gates, the gatekeeper into heaven. And so you'll hear that sometimes, St. Peter letting people into heaven. That's in our popular tradition. Some other trivia for you. Peter is not his actual name. His name is Simon. And he's called Peter because early on in the Gospels, Jesus tells him, you will no longer be Simon. I'm going to call you Peter or Cephas, depending on the translation. And that means rock. You will be the rock on which I will build the church. And that's exactly what he does. He goes on to work very hard to be one of those first disciples who goes on to spread the church in the early few days after Jesus' ascension. So Peter actually did give his life for his faith. And we don't have anything biblical about how he died. The Gospel of John alludes to the fact that he will, quote, stretch his arms out and be taken where he doesn't want to go. And tradition believes that he was crucified, that like Jesus, Peter was crucified for his faith in Rome. And the popular story goes that he did not want to be crucified in the same manner as Jesus. He didn't believe he was worthy to be crucified in the same manner as Jesus. So he requested to be crucified upside down. And you'll see that sometimes in pictures of Peter. That's how he chose to die. So he wouldn't die in the same manner as God. He thought that was reserved for God alone. So yes, there's so much more to say about Peter. There are so many more stories that I cannot wait to share with you about Peter, and I look forward to having you join us on Sunday, and I am excited. See you then.